speaking of things that are difficult, do you think that the Carolina Panthers will have a more difficult time winning their opener without Brian Burns?
Man, I've heard of quiet quitting before. I don't even know what you would call this because it just felt like all preseason. Well, Brian Burns isn't playing because they just want to save him and make sure he's healthy.
Yeah.
Well, so that's not really the case.
No, essentially,
what's going on here?
I saw this phrased as, instead of it being a holdout for Brian Burns, who's got his 5th year. Real quick context. Both he and Nick Bosa with the 49ers, and Brian Burns, both of those guys had their 5th year options picked up. So Nick Bosa is going to get $17.859 million this upcoming season.
Which sounds good, but
it's not. And Burns is scheduled to make just slightly over $16 million this upcoming season for the Carolina Panthers.
Which sounds good, but
not. Bosa wants to be the highest paid defensive player in the NFL.
Okay.
So you're looking at around $32 million annually. Now,
so double.
Is Brian Bursa? I'm confusing names here. Is Brian Burns on the level of Nick Bosa?
I think so.
Okay. So you're waiting on Nick Bosa to set the market. Nick Bosa is going to get more money than Brian Burns. So my guess is that the Carolina Panthers are waiting to see what Bosa does to set the market with the 49ers before they decide to finally put pen to paper on this new contract.
But Burns has actually been in camp and practicing.
And that's until now.
Okay.
Until now. He didn't show up through walkthroughs. He didn't show up yesterday. And I started texting some of our Panthers friends. Because look, I'll admit, man, I was in travel hockey dad mode. I mean, I was keeping up with the local football teams, but in terms of like the day-to-day Panthers stuff, like I'm like, let's just get ready for week 1. Until yesterday, I see, Burns didn't show up again today. And I texted my Panthers friends. I said, hey, so a little context here. What's going on? And the 3 people I texted all said the same thing. Wake me up when Wednesday arrives. If he's not at practice on Wednesday, then we can have a serious conversation. Frank Reich was actually asked about this at his availability this week and what exactly is going on here. And it's a pretty interesting exchange between Reich, Joe Person, and others who cover the Panthers.
That was a personal matter to him. I'll defer to him on that.
Frank, any concern he may not be available in week 1?
Again, I'm going to defer. I'll defer to Brian on that. I mean, just as I wouldn't say this about, I just would generally speak and say about any of our players, just that, I would, anyway, I'll just defer to Brian on that.
On that note, we heard you all summer praise him, others praise him for being here. And now on the cusp of the season, it doesn't seem like he's a participant. Your concerns and what do you say to the rest of the team?
Great. I love that question. I appreciate you asking that question because, my view of Brian Burns doesn't diminish at all. We understand there's a business side to this to this thing we do. And I still respect and admire the way he's handled himself. And, so I have nothing but the highest regard for Brian Burns.
So that's Frank Reich getting questions about Brian Burns, including one from Joe Person there. And speaking of the business, hey, very excited to tell you that our Panthers conversations this year brought to you by Graffiti in downtown Cary. You might know Graffiti from its various appearances on the 919 Vice podcast. Wayne Holt, Adam Eschbaugh run that place. It's a great spot. They got a bunch of you might think of it as axe throwing and getting some great bourbon, but tell you what, you can actually watch football.
I was going to say, there's a tie in here.
There's a tie in here. They got all the TVs. They got the Sunday package. And most importantly, bourbon. Now on Tuesday nights, they do the break even night where if you want to have been trying these bourbons and you try to go to the ABC store and they're super expensive and you just don't want to invest hundreds of dollars on a bourbon, you get a 1 ounce pour break even price at Graffiti. They're doing more of this on specials on Sunday while you watch football. So go check it out at Graffiti. So that's Frank Reich talking about Brian Burns. And I'm very much of the opinion that it's not a thing until it becomes a thing.
Sure.
It's only Tuesday. It's not a thing yet. Let's wait, Joe.
But to kind of answer the question there about what would happen, the Carolina Panthers are very much like the Clemson Tigers. They only have so many guys that are difference makers.
Right.
And Brian Burns is one of those difference makers. And some of the grace that you've tried to show the Panthers in this preseason defensively has been, well, yeah, but Burns isn't playing.
We haven't seen him play.
And he is a huge difference maker.
Mm-hmm.
If he can't play, oof, that's not good for them.
You can also tell that frustration.
Or if he won't play.
You can tell that frustration from Frank Reich. We've actually seen this a couple of times already where coaches are at odds with what the general manager and the owner want in terms of financials. Frank Reich just wants his best players available to win some freaking football games.
Please, in the opener, yes, in a game that they could absolutely win against Atlanta.
Absolutely, but it's really going to be difficult if you don't have Burns, and that's at odds with what management wants in terms of contracts and future salary cap considerations and everything else. Management always wants to win in these cases anyway. They don't want to make these guys the highest paid players. It's fine. I get it. So that frustration bubbled over with Reich when he got pressed some more on the availability of Brian Burns for week 1.
I'm at the stage in this where I'm not involved in the contract negotiation at all. Zero. I have zero. At this point, I've expressed, Mr. Tepper and Scott asked me my views of certain things. I've expressed my views. I'm just worried about beating Atlanta, getting our team ready to play Atlanta. Really, that's all that's on my mind. And do I hope that he's there? Absolutely. I hope he's there. But if he's not there, I'm not worried about it. Just move forward.
We're on to Cincinnati, Joe.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think you panic if he doesn't show up tomorrow. That's you definitely get into that mode.
Yes.
Yeah, there's some frustration there because the way you construct a team, all of those formulas included Brian Burns being a guy pressuring the opponent's quarterback.